Hello and welcome to our London History Podcast, where we share our love of London, its people, places and history. This podcast is designed for you to learn things about London that most Londoners don't even know, all in 20 minutes. I am your host, Hazel Baker, qualified London tour guide and CEO of londonguidedwalks.co.uk. Show notes plus photos and recommended reading can be found on each associated episode's webpage. Simply go to londonguidedwalks.co.uk/podcast. Don't forget, if you enjoy what we do, then please rate and review. It warms the cockles of my heart to read your appreciation of this labour of love. Get that cup of tea, put your feet up and enjoy. Joining me in the studio today is Natalia Jagielska. She is studying for a PhD at Palaeontology at the University of Edinburgh, studying Jurassic pterosaurs. She is also a talented illustrator. Natalia, we are going to be talking about something that I know a teeny bit about, and that is geology, specifically geology of London clay and chalk and the fossils and its uses. So let's get down and dirty with the detail.
I study paleontology, which is geology, which is study of rocks. And the best thing about London is every facet of that city is related somehow to geology. So you look at the buildings, they compose of limestone, which is a fossiliferous rock. You look at the things that London is standing on, that's Ice Age superficial deposits. You look beneath that, and that's the Jurassic. So we have three different layers of geology you can interact with by just standing in one place. So that's really interesting. And geology is principle of things stacking on top of each other with time, sometimes eroding, sometimes growing, changing. And same applies to architecture, which also grows on top of each other. And best thing about architecture, its use of geological stone. There's a term in geology called bioturbation, in which animals interact with the sediments and turbate it and change it. And I called architecture similar thing because it's us as animals digging out rocks and stacking them in different positions. We're just doing extreme bioturbation and altering the geology. But yeah, that's the brief introduction. I hope that's right.
That's a really nice way of thinking about it, actually, because I'm a geocacher in my part-time, and we do a geology walk, and we look at things, and there are earth caches. And it's all about geology. And you notice certain things when you have to really look at it because you want to get that little point. And there are some really obvious ones in London that people can see and go, actually, they're fossils straight away. And people don't expect it at all. Like maybe on the Bank of America on Newgate Street, for example. They're really obvious ones. But thinking about how you were saying a bit of us digging things up and then using them again and actually creating what is underneath our feet on top of the earth and interacting with it, that's a really nice way of thinking about it.
With London, most of the building rocks actually don't come from London because London is sitting on clay, and clay is excellent for brick making. If you bake it, pretty nice brick, and there's a lot of original brick making coming in London. But clay itself is not a good building stock because it's not a stone, it's clay. So most of things we are getting, it's imported, and most of imported clays come from Bath or Portland, which I'll be explaining more because they usually are limestones. So it's a rock that forms in shallow seas. Believe it or not, 100 million years ago, UK was actually pretty warm. It was a tropical sea, Mediterranean kind of settings with a lot of side deposition, which usually occurs around Mediterranean settings in very warm climates. And during that time, a lot of things called oolites formed, which are small bits of shell that are covered by limestone or micrite that stack on top of each other and lithify to form a pretty big rock, usually trapping fossils or animals that lived within that area. And with time, those areas lithified, and we cut them into squares and import them to London. And the best place for that is Portland, which is a small island south of London. The best thing about it is you can take a boat and just swim from the Thames to the north to this channel and just pick it up, which makes it very, very handy for transport instead of dragging things across the land. And that's why it became very popular, especially after the fire of London, where you have a lot of things destroyed, and architects thought we have to build something that will not go in flames easily and stone doesn't really catch fire. So they built other things using Portland limestone, most notably St. Paul's Cathedral, and other small bits. So sometimes when you just sit around, just look around at white buildings, because it's a very white stone, and you'll notice small shells, usually of gastropods, which are snails. and ammonites within it. Last time when I was just having a Greggs with my friend next to Westminster, I just sort of saw a random thing close to the Churchill statue. It's like, oh, I can see Bible impression on this. I just started looking at one gum-covered, dirty pavement because like, oh, there's so many fossils. And you start figuring out from which area of the UK it had my came from. There are also some limestones that are imported from Italy, same with marbles, but usually we just stay to local things and they usually come from Bath. When you see a yellow building, that possibly comes from the Bath limestone, which I happen to be studying. And if it's white and pearly, that's most likely coming from Portland. And they are Jurassic in age. There are some fossil vertebrates and reptiles within that rock, but they're not very common. I think there's one church close to Westminster which has a tail tooth inside it. So if you go around churches and try to find one, but otherwise they're quite rare. It's usually invertebrates, mollusks, and ammonites and things like that. So that's exciting.
I like an idea now of walking through Jurassic London. That's a new thought, isn't it?
Just the fact that London is sitting on top of Jurassic deposits, more or less. It's Jurassic, Cretaceous, and Eocene and other things. But it's within the same basin. There's a lot of Jurassic deposits which yield amazing fossils. And that's why paleontology and study of dinosaurs sort of came from London, and its intellectual elite started engaging with it. Actually, the London Paleogeographic Society started as London Clay Club, in which people were just filtering from London clay, searching for fossils, and it sort of started from that. The first major dinosaur fossil was actually discovered in 17th century, and many people didn't know about dinosaurs or extinctions back then. They thought it came from mythical big elephant, and one guy called it human scrotum because it looked like it. It's actually end of a femur of a theropod dinosaur, and in the future, when the dinosaurs were a thing, they thought, oh, that human scrotum that's fossilized is actually not a scrotum. It's a big of a leg bone. Thanks to that, we have megalosaurus, and thanks to megalosaurus, we have dinosauria, which are called by Sir Richard Owen, who opened Natural History Museum London. The Natural History Museum London is not built out of it's made of terracotta, which is baked clay. They didn't make it of limestone because limestone dissolves in rainwater, and London is rainy, and rain usually carries acid, especially if you have a lot of coal burning, which was happening around a lot in Victorian times. So he said, we want to do something that doesn't erode quickly, so they picked terracotta. But other buildings that can relocate from limestone are very prone to erosion. Especially Westminster had a lot of problems. They had to change its limestone face once entirely fully. Then it was created from one different rock type, and they just eroded and changed in a different rock type throughout the 19th century because it was so prone to erosion thanks to the rain and it mixing with the house of coal burning. And still ongoing problem. A lot of limestone is affected by rainwater.
Well, that's it. Also, the colours of London have changed throughout the years due to the popularity of whatever building material. So you mentioned about Portland stone on Portland. Mm-hmm. So Sir Christopher Wren, after the Great Fire of London in 1666, he was given the access to Portland stone solely. No one else could touch it. And that was Charles II who signed that one off. So he was rather lucky, wasn't he, to have access to all of that building material. And as you can see, the whiteness of St. Paul's Cathedral, the whiteness of the Temple Bar, and that it's Portland stone because it's just so gorgeously white. And then, as you were saying, from the terracotta and also the clay, building bricks, especially after the population boom in the 1820s, people needed new houses. Houses needed to be put up quick, and bricks was a really good way of doing that because you could literally have clay right there and then make the bricks and build the houses right next to it. So we think that London now, when we're walking through, and it's always a building site, isn't it? There's always something being built somewhere. But that was exactly the same in Victorian times as well. And you have the two brick walking through, you'll see a London stock, and that is that yellowy, grey, bluey, quite pretty brick, and that's from the clay from London. However, if you look at some of the details of some of the buildings, i.e. this red brick, then that comes not from London, but usually from Leicestershire or Staffordshire, which is where I'm from. So I'm very used to seeing red buildings, and then coming down to London and seeing very different colours. That is, once again, something very different and unique to London. Now, Natalia, you were saying about what you were studying, which is the Bath stone. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so when you look at Thames Valley, you have a big basin created by the London Chalk. Beneath it, you have something called the Great Ulai Group, which was created when you have all the small islands in UK, and them were traversed by dinosaurs and pterosaurs. a lot of those exposures of Stonesfield slate, which is Bathonian in age. Bathonian in age comes from city of Bath. So like we have the Portlandian age, which is also associated with the Portland formation. But from Bathonian formation, we have dinosaur remains. It's one of the best sites in the world to study Middle Jurassic, which is a very understudied area. And it's also birthplace of paleontology, like I said, with the megalosaurus and other creatures coming from that specific formation. Bath stone is cheaper than Portland. It's easier to cut. It's erodes slightly quicker. So a lot of residential buildings and less prestigious, for example, the back of Buckingham Palace from it. And it looks quite a similar view. Portland stone is also in, because I'm a northerner, I come from Manchester, but Portland stone is used in Liverpool docks quite extensively. So we still have this very alien rock that's not around here, just imported, because it looks so nice.
It does look very nice.
But it didn't look nice always. When you look at historical photos, it's very prone to sooting, because when you have limestone reacts with water, it creates this kind of grayish, blackish seep that has to be restored. So in 60th, 50s, they're blackish and not as really nice. That's why when you go to Edinburgh, which doesn't have any Portland, we have a lot of sandstone. Because it's sandstone, the soot sort of remains, is very hard to clean. So it looks black and gothic. And people say, oh, that's the aesthetic of the area. It's meant to be yellowish or white. It's a side effect of coal burning, but it looks cool and gothic, and people want to retain that.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. And how did everybody get all of these different stones to London? Because we had the canals, but then you've got the railways coming in the late 1830s and really mainly in the 1840s. So was it coming by rail or was it coming by sea and then up the Thames? How were they travelling it?
Both by rail and the Thames, and that's why it made Portland so special, because it's on a small island, so it's very easy to transport something that's quite heavy as it is. So it was easier to drag around. But also, same with Bath, it was actually those materials were carried over even during the Roman times. So people knew how to transport them, and not exactly at the same value as we do currently, but they were still transported those things. It's still going on. The Albion Stone, which is the company that runs it, still transports it by rail and boat. But you might cut that out because I'm not an expert on transport of them.
Logistical, if you're building buildings from stone, they are big, significant buildings, which means you need a lot of stone.
I know. And even when you look at, because Portland stone is also in New York, so I assume it's not a big leap to export it. Just put it on a big tanker and send it across the Atlantic. It should arrive.
Yeah. But so I do love the idea of being able to play with different types of building material as well. I can never understand why they built the Houses of Parliament, Westminster, with such a rock that is known for reducing amongst the rain. Now, admittedly, London has less rainfall than Rome. I'd just like to put that out there. It's just that it just seems wetter here for longer. We don't have the heat to absorb all the rain.
I say London seems like a tropical place comparing to Manchester. It rains in Manchester non-stop, and you go to Edinburgh, it's suddenly dry. It's just Manchester and Wales. They're just haunted, and everybody thinks, oh, okay, it's rainy. No, it's just Wales and Manchester. Everybody else is right. They take all the beating.
Yeah, oh yes. You're talking to a girl who first ever went to Manchester wearing blue suede shoes. I remember that trip very well. So thinking about London and the colours, so you've got sand-coloured limestone, you've got the yellow, you've got the Portland stone with the white, you've got the terracotta and the red brick, you've got the yellowy, grey London stock as well. That's Technicolor London, isn't it?
It is. Cities are usually made of things they might sit on. For example, Aberdeen is known as the Granite City because it's all pearly white from granite because it's sitting on a granite formation. Same with Paris, Lutein limestone, which is in the Paris basin. Paris has this creamy, yellowy thing because it's sitting on the quarry it's currently carrying out of, making it sort of similar to London because they both limestone base. It's just Paris yellowish. London has this nice pearly white sheen, which I think is slightly nicer. It looks kind of marble-like. And of course, you have some other imports. You have out of granite, which comes from Cornwall. That's the Cornish granite, more darkish with some shiny material that's usually used as pedestals for a lot of statues. And you have some marble is basically that has been cooked for a little bit longer by igneous processes, so it has been metamorphosed, as we call it. But yeah, it is very multicolored and without any paint drop or anything. It's just the rocks it's using. And it's interesting because it's created of things it's standing on, so things it has imported, which is great.
I agree. Now, going back to the fossils that you were mentioning, what fossil was it that you said that you could see in a church?
It's an unidentified reptile tooth. But if you're going to search for things, look for things that look like screwdrivers or just screws, because they're gastropods, so they're basically snails. And there's also some of those fossils are invertebrates, so they are not most exciting things. But sometimes it happens people find actual fossils locked in cut limestones and things that just miss people cutting it. So be on the lookout. You might find some kind of bigger vertebrate remain, especially in more newer buildings. One of my hobbies is just going and seeing Jura marble, which is the most popular imported stone we have from Germany, at least in Edinburgh, in new buildings. And you have a lot of amazing ammonites, sponges, and I'm looking out maybe of pterosaurs or Archaeopteryx. I'll be very excited. It's pretty likely. There's some cases of people finding whale bones and other bigger bones in the marbles of kitchen panels.
Whale bones in marble.
Yeah.
My goodness. And here I was thinking I was really smart because I found some oyster shells in, I think it was limestone. It's the base of the statue of Charles I, which is just at the bottom of Trafalgar Square. It was the very first Renaissance equestrian statue that we had in the country. And when you have a look at it more closely, you can see how the water over those hundreds of years has worn it all down. And you can actually, when you touch it, the oyster shell it looks like a horseshoe because obviously it's not all available. But is that an oyster shell or am I just imagining it?
Yeah, it might be a bivalve. Most things we are seeing, especially in Portland, on the rock formation, which is usually used for decorative purpose because it's sturdy and has a lot of fossils. It also, a lot of fossils are created from aragonite, which is not very stable, so it changes a form as it sort of fossilizes. So usually we just see casts of things, but not actual fossils, just gaps they left behind, or slightly chemically altered versions of them. So it looks more amorphous holes rather than actual full fossils. Sometimes you can see ribs and other things. So it's pretty possibly I've seen something. And if you have time, you can go to the Green Park metro station because its entire theme is Portland limestone and it has this kind of big artwork showing different gastropods on top of it. And then it goes slightly further up, I think it's west, and you have the RAF Bomber Memorial, which is also created of Portland limestone. So go down the memorials and just you're about to find some fossils.
I mean, I'm really inspired to go on a fossil hunt now. And I think you have given me a tool which is going to help that. And that's the London Pavement Geology. They have an app. And I haven't been stopped playing with it since, actually. And now I can just imagine getting my little nephew back into London. And I think we should go on a fossil hunt. That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I think it's something for all ages can do.
And the best thing about that app, you can also add things. So if you spot something, you can be one of the contributors. I found a fossil fish in Cathedral pavement stone in Edinburgh that nobody knew about. So you might be a pioneer. The best thing with lockdown is traveling is hard. So we go fossil hunting, but there's so many fossiliferous rocks in cities already. So be a paleontologist and just crawl around London and look at different, pavements and corners of the streets because you might find something cool.
I can expect this to be taking up a lot of my spare time now. Thank you very much for that, Natalia. I don't think it's a problem making geological history.
You did, and you can always go to Natural History Museum London and Grand Museum and look at actual fossils.
Yes, I have done that, and I must admit they have a huge ammonite, the biggest one I've seen in England. When I went to Morocco, they had some gigantic ones on display. I really could not believe that these things were real. It just goes to show you we are as people and also a space, a little dot in time really compared to everything else that has been on this earth. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
It is, and also how we, for such a short amount of time, how much we have changed it. After all, we are digging different things that were deposited for millions of years and still changing, and we're now shifting them however much we like. And also with those, you can see how big they are. But remember, ammonites were snacks for things that lived in the sea. So you can imagine how big were the things eating those ammonites.
Oh, I'm going to have nightmares now thinking about that. Thank you very much for that one. For our listeners, I'm going to put the links that Natalia shared with me onto the show notes, as well with a link to Natalia's Twitter account where she shared some really amazing stuff, including her illustrations. And also, if you want to hear a little bit more about the Ice Age and the change, but more importantly, the animals that lived in what is now London, then you can listen to episode 2 of our podcast called Fantastic Beasts. And then you will hear all about giant elks and woolly mammoths.
Hippos that lived in the West End. So.
Yes, and they were found in Trafalgar Square. Can you believe that? Hippos in Trafalgar Square. Brilliant. And continuing on to our dinosaur theme, then episode 47, if you haven't listened to that so far, then get on to it. It is Victorian dinosaurs in Crystal Palace Park, where I talked to Sarah Slaughter about these wonderful life-size dinosaurs that they've got there and which you can visit absolutely free. That's all we've got time for now. Thanks very much for joining us. If you have any suggestions on themes, or indeed know of anybody who'd be a wonderful guest on our London History podcast, then please do get in touch. You can do that by going to our website, londonguidedwalks.co.uk, and clicking Contact Us. Thanks again. Till next time.